Hello, my Crystal Loves Texas Facebook and YouTube and Instagram family. We are here. We are here. We're right in the middle of runoff season right now, and I think that we are just days away from the beginning of early voting. And when my next guest comes on, he can correct me on that. I think I'm right on that, but I think early voting is around the corner. And have we got a treat for you tonight? Let me make sure I'm looking in the right camera. Now I am, but we've got a treat for you tonight because nothing is more exciting than something fresh and new that you may not have seen or heard about before that kind of gives you encouragement. You know, even if you are someone who was thinking about doing something big and you never thought you could do it, but you look around the corner and somebody is doing it who reminds you of yourself. And we've got none other tonight on than one of the Harris County District Clerk candidates who is in the runoff, and I'm going to bring him on in a second, but I am going to bring on my co-host Rebecca first. There she is. Rebecca, you love those close-ups, don't you? I'm going to make you back that camera up. I'm going to make you back that camera. Oh my goodness. Okay. Rebecca, tell us who you are.
Okay, so I am Rebecca Williams. I am Crystal Dillard's co-host on the Crystal Loves Texas show. Y'all should know me by now, though, right? So
she's the fire starter.
Yes.
But Rebecca, listen, we are going to go ahead and get started and bring on our next guest. And I'm going to let him, I wanted to do a little bit of a teaser, but I'm going to let him introduce himself and tell us a little bit about himself because I've got so many questions and it's exciting because one of the main things is because he was what would be called a dark horse. No one thought that a young person, a person who was relatively new to the game, would get into the runoffs against names that we've never heard of. So let's bring him on. Let's see there. And there he is. Hey, Alex.
Hi. No, thank you so much for having me here, Rebecca and Crystal. I appreciate it.
Oh, you are welcome. Yes. Alex, first, tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us, well, first tell us your full name. You know, of course, what you're running for. We got it on there anyway. But tell us a little bit about how you decided that you were going to throw your hat in the ring to become Harris County District Clerk. Was it something that you dreamed about from the time you were a little kid, or how did it go?
Yes. So my name is Jose Alex Maldonado, and I'm running to be your next Harris County District Clerk. I'm a lifelong Houstonian. I was born and raised here to the son of immigrants. I was the first one in my family to go to college. At the age of 17, I had my associate's degree, and at the age of 19, I graduated with my bachelor's in applied math and statistics. By the age of 21, I had my master's from Rice University, and at age 20, I was already contracted to become a public school teacher in Clear Creek ISD. And so I have broken a lot of records.
Yes.
I've broken a lot of records. And then now I'm 23, about to be 24, doing my second master's in industrial engineering at the University of Houston. And so the reason I decided to run for Harris County District Clerk is because the district clerk's office is in charge of managing jury duty service. And so one of the biggest things that's happening is many people are not coming to jury duty. Yeah. You know, I believe it's about 18 to 20% of people who are showing up. And so my research at Rice University was with culture, relevant pedagogy. And if somebody doesn't know what that is trying to get students engaged by using real world applications. And so teaching mathematics, I knew coming into this classroom, I was going to deal with a lot of students that were not engaged in mathematics. You know, they would either say, I'm not good at math, or I don't like math. And
that
so
was me, Alex.
Yes. Yeah, so that's most people. And so I spent 2 years doing research on how do I get those students engaged, and my numbers speak for themselves. Across the board, I have received exceeds expectations on my t-test reports, accomplished level 5, which usually teachers don't get that until they have decades of experience. And so that's
Right.
how I'm getting my students engaged. And so I wanted to use that research and that experience into the district clerk's office to see, hey, how do I get people into doing their civic duty? And I think it all starts in our classrooms.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, because when people come onto our podcast, we like for people to really get to know the candidate. So, can you tell us a little bit about the part where you grew up in Houston, where you went to middle school and
Yep.
elementary school, high school? Because I saw on some of your paperwork that you were a graduate of is it East Early College?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct.
Let me tell you this. I was a teacher at Ortiz Middle School, and actually I had some of the first, that was when the early college concept was just coming into bloom. This was like, I'm going to say 2002, 2003, something like that.
Mhm.
And East just opened up. It was going to be their first class. And my students over at Ortiz, I had some of the best students. And I said, this is a wonderful concept. I want my students to be able to get those associate degrees, and all they got to do is figure out how to pay the last 2 years of college, and they can do that, or they can get a scholarship for that. And I remember sitting there, and along with my students, we filled out 13 applications and went and practiced interview and all that. That's, I don't know if they still have the interview process, but we practiced interview and all of that. And every one of my students got in. That was their first year in existence.
Wow. Wow. I mean, I agree. Easterly is one of those campuses that I can't attribute, you know, I can't say more thank you to those teachers, the
Yeah.
faculty there. It was just one of those schools that I don't think I would be running for office if it wasn't for
Wow.
that education that I received there. And so, one, I would say those students that you sent out to Easterly, I'm sure they're out there. I'm pretty sure they're forever grateful. Um,
Yes, yes.
because that's the type of
And as a matter of fact, this one didn't go to East. I'm not sure. I think he went to, but one of my students, I was so excited. One of my students from Ortiz, the last time I ran for office, this was in 2022, but someone walked up behind me and he said, "You remember this, Rebecca?" And he said, "Miss Dillard?" I said, "Yes." And lo and behold, it was one of my students who was also running for judge. And he was one of my students. And yes, yes, yes. And, it makes you feel like maybe you said something or did something, or maybe you were some kind of example to help that kid maybe make that decision. I'm hoping that that was the case. But, to see a person your age, a person who is so focused on what they want, what would you say to other people who are maybe in high school or college students right now who would say to themselves, there's absolutely no way that I could do that because I don't have any experience. I've never done that before. No one knows who I am. Were you sitting in those shoes in that same seat?
Yeah, no, I agreed when I first declared my run for Harris County District Clerk. Actually, if you would have told me a year ago that I would be in the runoff for Harris County District Clerk, I would possibly say there's no way. There's no way. I'm a math teacher, I'm an introvert at heart.
Yeah,
I like to solve my problems, in quiet. And so,
yeah,
if somebody would have told me that, I would have said you're crazy.
yeah.
um, but I think my biggest advice to anybody is that it's a life-changing experience to run for office. I mean, it is one of the biggest privileges that I will ever receive in my life. And so I encourage anybody, everybody should be able to run for office.
Right.
Because it's our civic duty, and it's a once in a lifetime experience. You get to communicate with people, be knocking on doors, get to meet your neighbors. And so I get to meet so many interesting and wonderful people who serve our community. I mean, I know that's how I met you on the campaign trail.
Yeah.
You know, another teacher running for office. And I know Michelle Williams is somebody else, another teacher running for office. And so I encourage everybody to run for office, even if you don't know how to get started.
Right.
You know, there's so many great training programs, such as Run for Something is a great training program for new candidates.
Yes.
And so I encourage, you know, anybody, you know, just put your hat on the ballot and do your hardest work that you can out there. Meet new people, and if you're not successful the first time, then you know you've already developed the relationships with those voters, and more than anything, the Democratic Party itself.
Absolutely. Alex, let me ask you this, and this is something that I know probably a lot of people think about, especially Black and brown people and people sitting in the seats of people who have historically been underrepresented. Why do you think so many people in the minority communities don't really engage in jury duty? You know, why do you think that? And you know, as a result, when you see juries, you see many people who look like myself, Rebecca, and you, who are sitting there in the courtroom, and many times the jury, it's difficult to get that jury to look like the representation of the people that are there wanting to receive justice. Why do you think it is?
Yes, I think the biggest thing, and I attribute a lot of the success to the current district clerk, Marilyn Burgess.
Right.
One of the biggest things is pay. You know, before Marilyn was in office, parking was expensive. You know,
Yes.
You know, the whole stipend they would give you for your service would be taken up by parking. Sometimes you would actually go out in the negative because of that parking.
Yeah.
And so I think the first step forward that Maryland did is making sure that we are increasing jury duty pay, making sure we're giving them free parking and free coffee. And so I think that was one of the biggest leaps forward, as well as electronic jury registration. That was something else that was very, very handy back then. It was my understanding you had to mail it in, or do it somewhere in paper. So I think those are great innovations, but I think the biggest thing I still think is pay. You know, the state of Texas doesn't mandate companies to pay when they miss jury duty service. I'm grateful as a teacher that my school district does pay, but that doesn't mean somebody working at a company or a business, that doesn't mean they have to pay. So sometimes they look at it and they say it's not worth it for me to miss work, especially as people are living paycheck to paycheck. So I think that's one of the first things is trying to make sure, can we increase it to match up at least with minimum wage, you know, so therefore people can at the very least, you know, make up their days of work. I think the other thing is definitely going out into the community. You know, and telling people the importance of jury duty. And I think it all starts in our schools, especially as seniors. I'm forever grateful for my high school, because I'm gonna be honest, I was talking to other young people and we don't know how we were registered to vote. I don't remember being registered, but I know that I was able to. You know, and I'm sure that was due to my high school. You know, I'm pretty sure they had a play in that. You know, I don't quite remember, but you know, I know they definitely had to be the ones to register me. And so we need to do that same thing in our high schools, you know, teaching them that, you know, voting is important for your civic duty, but so is attending jury duty. And so I think it's about doing real grassroots community outreach. And so I think those are the two factors, you know, doing community outreach and making sure that we're increasing jury duty pay.
Okay, so okay, so what do you plan on? First of all, hello once again. My question is, what are some of your plans for the county clerk's office?
The district clerk. I get them confused too, because county is in there, and we were reprimanded about that.
Please, don't come after me. Please, Tanisha, do not come after me. I just want to take your position, hon. So what are your plans for the district clerk's office?
Yes. So a little before I answer that question, I think it would be good to give people some clarity about what the district clerk's office does. And
Yes.
so the district clerk's office is in charge of managing and accepting the documentation for all of the district courts. So you're talking
Okay.
the criminal, juvenile, family, and civil courts, as well as the county criminal court. We're
Okay.
also in charge of managing the jury duty pool. Um, as well. That's another important topic that we're in charge of. And so one of the biggest plans that I have for the district clerk's office is my the previous district clerks have worked in digitalizing everything. And so,
Okay.
I attribute a lot of success to Marilyn. She started electronic plea deals, electronic
Yeah.
warrants, electronic citations, but there's still a lot of work that is still being done on paper. One of the biggest things if I were to be elected, that I would like to tackle is the criminal juvenile delinquency program. That's still being done on paper. And so
Yeah.
you still have clerks that are filing that documentation on paper. And so that's one of the first things that I want to go ahead and do, is see how can we digitalize those documents. We also have our imaging program. So we still have a lot of paper documents from before our documents were electronic that are still being worked on being filed. And so definitely helping speed up that process. So therefore we don't lose that documentation in the event of a natural disaster. And so
Yes.
that's the other thing. And then the third thing is I've spoken to a lot of lawyers, a lot of judges and clerks. And
Yeah.
the biggest issue that they're having is being able to access the digital folder. And so there's a software that holds all the motions, orders, all the information regarding a case. And so a lot of judges are telling me that they're spending too much time waiting on that software to load. And so one of the first things I want to do is go into that office, take a look at our servers. How can we increase that speed? Because Harris County is only getting bigger.
Oh,
There's
absolutely.
only more filings every day. There's more people every day. And so if the system's already slowing down, what's going to happen in 10 years? And so we need to
Right.
build the database and our servers and our technology to keep up with demand. And so I think that's the biggest thing the district clerks is in charge is, continue to modernize the office so therefore it's more efficient for our judges and especially the people of Harris County. That's who it affects the most.
And
Right.
I have another question. I don't know if Crystal wanted to interject or not, but I had another question. In the event, and you have to kind of think about these contingency plans. In the event the mayor and the city council decide not to give you any more money, right?
Oof.
Because we hear
Yeah.
about budget short. Houston is in a big budget deficit, budget shortfall right now.
Yeah.
In the event they say, Alex, we know this is important to you, we know this needs to be done, but right now we don't have the money for it. So we can't give you anything within these next 2 years. How do you plan on still getting those projects done if the city decides not to give you any more money?
Yeah. So I do know the county is in a budget shortfall currently. I'm
Right.
not sure how much it is, but I do know that every single agency is going to have to, either keep their budget or may need to, bounce back a little bit on their budget. And so one of the nice things about this office is that there already is an IT team there. We
Okay.
already have a staff of IT, so that doesn't mean we need to contract more programmers or IT staff.
Right.
Everything in the district clerk's office was made by scratch. And so it can be improved. Now, there are some investments that do need to be made regarding technology, but those investments can be made up because when you make those investments, that means you're not spending money on paper, toner, printers. And
Right.
so that is what I'm hoping that investment will go ahead and remove, because toner is expensive. Paper is
Right.
very expensive, especially in an office that could be dealing with thousands of papers a day. That's where I'm
Yes.
thinking the investment could be. And so I think it all starts by working with what we have, and what we have already is we already have an IT team there um, that can already work. And any investments, then I think my background working on my master's in industrial engineering will help me look for resource allocation, seeing where can we trim our budget, where can we move some resources,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, if we improve technology, we improve the work of our clerks and we make them
Yes.
more efficient in their job. And so I just think it's, when I go in there, I'm going to have to take a look at that budget, work with the people who already have the experience and knowledge about the budget, and see, hey, how can we reallocate those funds.
Right. Now, let me ask you this. I'm looking at some of the responsibilities that the district clerk actually has. And, when we go down, and I'm going to say this, I have been so guilty of this, as I'm sure so many of us have. But when we go down and we vote, and I'm one of those people, and I vote in every election, and I look at that ballot, and you know, your average voter is not going to know exactly what each one of those people in each one of those capacities actually does. And I'm looking here at the key responsibilities, and one of them that popped up was really interesting. I didn't know that the district clerk handled this, but passport processing.
That was gonna be my next
Let,
question after you finished.
yeah, yeah, let me say this. Two things. I haven't, and I'm embarrassed to admit this. I haven't renewed my passport
Mhm.
in a while because the processing time is
I have to
so,
leave.
oh my gosh, and it came to a grinding halt during COVID, of course, and I was told that it hasn't necessarily picked back up the momentum. And what can people expect, um if you're elected our next district clerk, in terms of processing those passports in an efficient way? Is that something that also has undergone some automation there?
Yeah. So currently, regarding so currently the district clerk's office does process passports in their canal office. So that's over there on the east end. Now, once a
Okay.
month, Maryland Burgess does a Saturday passport fair, and so you're able to register online. And it's my understanding that in 15 minutes you're in and out.
But how
You're
long does it take to come in?
now. I believe it's my understanding that that's still up to the federal government. I think
Okay.
the federal
Yeah.
government, the Secretary of State, is still in charge of processing that. It's just our
Okay.
job to be able to receive the documentation and hand it
Right.
over to them.
Got it.
But I think the nice thing that we have the ability to do is that we're able to open it on Saturdays. We're able
Yes.
to do Saturdays, but so therefore working families don't have to, take time off work, take their kids
Yeah.
out of school. And so we have that ability to, add more. Currently, we only do it one time on a Saturday. So we have the ability to do it more times. And so what I want to do is I want to work with community organizations, especially underrepresented organizations, to
Yes.
go into those communities, those Black and Brown communities, and be able to
Yes.
host a passport fair there for people who can't take time off work. And so that's something that we can do. Now, in regards to the processing, it's my understanding that that's still up to the federal government to
Okay.
process those, but we are able to process the applications of them outside of the usual hours.
And I'm looking, as I look at these duties, Alex, and I look at your at your background as far as statistics and numbers and that kind of thing. I had no idea that the district clerk was in charge as far as financial duties. They're in charge of assessing and collecting court costs, fines, fees, and restitution, maintaining court registry, holding funds in litigation, and money awarded to minors. There are some really, really detailed little things involving figures that the district clerk is responsible for.
Yes, no, there's a lot of things. I know the court registry is in charge of making sure whenever somebody's going through civil litigation, they're in
Right.
charge of holding those, that material funds in case of how that, what the
Right.
result ends up being. And so there are a lot of things that regarding court fees. And I think, once again, I always like to attribute a lot of the great work Marilyn did. She was a CPA, and so she was able to
Yeah.
Oh
recoup a
no,
lot
they have
of those
to
fines.
learn that today. I didn't know she was a
Yes.
CPA.
Yeah, she is a CPA, and so she was able to find that there was a lot of money, a lot of unpaid fines and fees. And so that's why I also think the district clerk's office could benefit from somebody who is working on an engineering degree, somebody who teaches college level statistics to high schoolers, background in applied math and statistics because I'm very detail oriented, making sure that that budget, that all the fees that are being assessed are being collected, making sure that they're being sent to the appropriate agency. A
Right.
lot of the time, those fees, they go straight up to the county. And a lot of times, too, is legislation, too. We're not in charge of setting those fees. It's legislation.
That's right.
So the Texas legislature, every 2 years, they decide, hey, we're going to bump up this fee. And so
Right.
a lot of things are set by statute. The
Yes.
legislature, when they come up every 2 years, they decide that, hey, we're going to make you do more reporting on certain cases.
Yes.
And I like to say that it's almost the same thing as teaching, our clerks and teaching, because
Yeah.
every 2 years, the legislature says, hey, we're going to make you do more work and we're not going to pay you for it.
That's
Same
right.
thing with our clerks. Every 2 years, the legislature could say,
Mandatory. It's going to be mandatory. You can't even
That's
opt
right.
out.
yes.
That's right. Yes.
Yes. And I think it's the same thing with our clerks. They say, hey, you got more reporting requirements, but you know what? We're not going to give you the money for it. And so I think it's one of those things that I can see how my background will really help relate to the clerks and can help, make sure everything's all good. And I think something else is accuracy. A lot of people don't know, but we're also in charge of making sure those court records are accurate. And
Right.
so we do have a data control section in the district clerk's office that receives reports.
Okay.
From JWeb, letting them know that, hey, there's some discrepancies. And so I want to go in there, being statistics, I'm all about accuracy. We want to be as accurate as we can be. So coming up with new technology to reduce those errors, because when you do have an error, that's taking time, it's taking money, having to go back
Yeah.
into the courtroom, getting reprocessed. And so if we're able to, trim those, be more accurate, then we're saving time, we're saving money. And so it's
Right.
all these little aspects that tell me, I think
Yeah.
you would benefit from having a problem solver and numbers person in there.
Absolutely.
Okay. So my question is, I was doing a little research myself before we come on the air, and they were saying the research was saying that it's about close to 500 people that work in the
Yes.
district clerk's
Yes.
office. I'm sure I want Felicia to come for me in the district clerk's office.
Yes, ma'am.
So, while you being so young, right? We see you have the qualifications, the education, and stuff like that. And I know that, a lot of people may say, oh my God, he's so young. So, how would you handle an office staff of that many people? Because that's a lot. I mean, even high school principals, well, no, they do, depending on
Yes.
how big the high school is.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a lot.
It's a lot of
500 people. So how do you plan to manage
Mhm.
all of those people in those different departments and all of those personalities?
Yeah. So I do want to talk a little bit about my background before I answer that question. Every single job I've held has been either managing students, managing volunteers, or managing staff. My first job at 17 was being a music coordinator. And so I was in charge of managing volunteers, your cantors, your accompanists. And then I moved on to teaching, which is managing students. I've done professional developments, mentor new teachers. And now I work as the director of music at St. Luke's, which is a pretty big parish. So I'm managing over 60 volunteers and about 2 staff members and a yearly budget. It's nowhere near as big as the district clerks, but my whole life has been about managing people. And so, yes, it is a bigger responsibility, but I think the most important thing is making sure that I have key individuals in key positions. Specifically,
Yes.
the organizational is you have 2 chief deputies currently, somebody over the courts, somebody over administration. And so it's making sure that I pick key people who understand the office, because whoever is going to be your chief deputy over the courts also has to not just manage clerk staff, but also develop relationships with the judges. And so it's all about making sure that I pick the right people for those positions. And so,
Right.
if I were to be elected, I want to make sure I have a good transition team. I want to invite District Clerk Marilyn Burgess, former District Clerk Lauren Jackson, former chief deputies who have been in office. And so it's all about choosing your right staff. to go ahead and help you manage, who have the skills and the experience. In regards to me, the biggest way that I've dealt, with volunteers and staff who are much older and have more
Mhm.
experience is I tell them, I'm here to work with you.
Right.
I bring a skill set and talents. You have your skills and talents. Let's work together to make this better.
Right.
And so that's how I plan on managing, is making sure that, hey, I'm going to come in there. My skills is with technology, accuracy, numbers. You have a certain skill set. Let's work together to make this better, and making sure that the people I put in key positions are experienced, talented, and have the people skills to continue moving that office. But I also think that it's always about morale too. With my students, teaching mathematics, I learned really quickly that they're not too interested in it. But
Yeah.
what I do is I make sure that I'm never sitting down on my desk. So the type of district
Yes.
clerk that I would be is somebody who's in the courtrooms, somebody who's learning the job that they're doing. I think that's the type of manager I would be, is being all over the place, being with community, as people are coming in, greeting them. And so I think it's a mix of of answers there.
Yeah. Let me ask you. Oh, let
I'm
me ask
sorry.
you something really, really quick, Rebecca.
Okay.
Um, Alex, since you have such a recent touch point of being with students, especially high school students,
Mhm.
excuse me, my allergies do this every
Oh, no
time.
worry.
They do this every time. But do you think there could possibly be room for there to be some type of mentorship or internship of some of the high school students to come in and volunteer during the summer to learn the ins and outs of the district clerk's office and just get some real world experience?
Yeah, I do think that was something that I was already looking into, because I know a lot of students have an interest in the legal field. And
Absolutely.
so doing an internship in the district clerk's office will be very unique, because you will see, you don't interpret documents, but you will see, where do these documents go? When you send
Right.
a citation in online, the district clerk's office is in charge of making sure we process it, we put it in our digital file, and then making sure it's going over to the constable's office. So
Right.
they serve people for jury, not for jury, they serve people for their case, make sure you're coming
Yes.
in. And so I think it brings a very unique perspective for people who are interested in the legal profession.
Right.
But I also think it's good ways for career pathways. Something too is we want to bring in new talent into the office. I had a meeting recently, and I learned that a lot of the people are actually retiring, or they're at the age of retirement, and they're
Right.
just kind of waiting. And so
Yes.
there is going to be a big need to fill in those positions. And so
Right.
I think bringing internships in is a wonderful idea, and also making sure we can recruit them. There was a big pay parity that just happened in the county, and so that
Right.
increased a lot of salaries.
Yes.
I'm not in office, so I don't know what the salaries are, but my
Right.
understanding is it could be as high as $25 an hour starting pay,
That's excellent.
which is very competitive.
That is. It
Um,
really is.
Yes, and so I think that's a great opportunity that we could have for our high schoolers. I think the only thing is make sure that we're vetting them, since this is the documentation can be very sensitive. It's just
Yes.
making sure that make sure we're vetting them, doing our courageous duty for background checks, and also
Right.
being careful what they can access and what they can't access.
Exactly.
So I
Exactly.
think it will take a little bit of speaking to our county clerk, county attorney, to see what areas can we have internships.
Okay, and then that was my next question to kind of piggyback off of Crystal. So, the internships, but what other kind of community involvement that you want alongside with the county clerk's office? So, how, I guess my question would be, how would the county clerk's office be involved in the community? Because your position is elected. So,
Yes.
how can you connect the community to your office?
Yeah.
outside of an election year?
Yes. So our office is mainly administrative, so we don't handle any legislative affairs. But I will say that the biggest thing we can help our community members is by helping them navigate our website. So one thing that most people don't know is that you're able to look up any public record through our website. So if you want to hire a nanny, somebody to mow your lawn, or you just you want to do a, I wouldn't say it's a background check, it's almost like an informal background check. You can
Right.
through our office. If it's a public record, you have
Okay.
access to it. And so you can look it up. And so I think that's the main form that I want to do engagement, is telling people, hey, you can look up public records online,
Right.
and not just telling them you can do it, but showing them that how you do it, walking them through those stages.
Right.
The second way is, of course, we're in charge of processing passports. So I want to go into those underrepresented communities where we can help process those passports for people that can't take time off. And so I think those are going to be the key ways of being out in the community, is telling them what services can we offer you. And those are the main two services we can offer them. We can also, for our pro se litigants, so those are people who don't have access to a lawyer, they can't afford one. There are certain things we can do to teach them. Hey, these are the resources that you have in case you are going through a lawsuit. We can guide them to the law library in
Right.
Texas. We can guide them through other resources through our website. I think the one thing I do, a lot of people misunderstand, is that our clerks cannot help you. It's by statute. We can't give any
Okay.
legal advice, but we can direct you in the right direction to those resources. And so I think that's going to be the biggest way to help the community, is showing them what can we offer you, and actually showing them, going to civic clubs, going, being a teacher. I want to be in our schools, and I
Yes.
want it to be me. I
Yes.
want to be the one going back into those classrooms
Yeah.
and telling them, this is how you access, those
Absolutely.
services.
Absolutely. Now, we are maybe about 2.5 weeks away from the actual, is that about right? About 2.5
Yeah.
weeks?
So early voting starts next week,
The 18th, right?
the 18th. Yes.
Yes.
And election day is about 2 weeks from now, from
Yeah.
2 weeks from tomorrow.
Now, there's still opportunity here, and I want people to know that, for folks who didn't even vote in the primary election, if you're a registered voter in Harris County, many people, Alex, have become so disheartened with what's at the top, what's up at the top as far as the state, what's all around us, the constant bickering, the bitterness. People have become disheartened, and they have just kind of pushed away from even participation. And we need for people in our communities to come back to the table, because if we come back in the numbers that we can and make our voices heard, that can be what pushes our interests over the top and gets people elected who are going to serve the interests of everyone.
Mhm.
And what would you say to voters who are out there who may have stayed away from the polls in the past few years because they said it's not going to matter anyway? What would you say to them? Especially now, they can be re-energized when they see someone like you, your age especially, okay? And what would you say to them to get them back out to the polls and to bring someone with them?
Yes. I think the biggest thing that I tell people all the time is your local elections matter. And that's because your local elected officials, we're talking commissioners, county clerk, district clerk, sheriff's office, city council members. I mean, those are the people who you actually interact with.
Right.
I mean, if you go through any lawsuit, I mean, go through any lawsuit, you're going to go through the district clerk's office. If you want a deed to your house, anything relating property, you're going to go to the county clerk. If you want to pay your taxes, you go to the tax assessor.
Yes.
Our commissioner's court, they're in charge of allocating funds for flood control.
Right.
That's what they're in charge of. And so, when we have a hurricane, that's the county judge, and the county judge is up for, they're in a runoff too. So what I tell people is, who do you want in a case of a natural disaster? Who do you want on that TV screen? Who do you think will give you the most accurate and beneficial information to lead you through that crisis?
Right.
And so that's what I tell voters all the time is these, down the ballot races are actually the ones that matter the most. School board races are just as important. I mean, they set your tax rate, they set initiatives for your school districts. And
Right.
if you email any elected official that's down the ballot, chances are you will get a response from them.
Right.
Because they don't have a big constituency. A lot of people, they get caught up in the big races,
Yeah.
Congress, the president, and they see the numbers a million, they say, well, there's a million voters, I'm not going to make a difference.
Yeah.
But you do make a difference in a county election when 100 votes could be the difference. We've seen
Yes.
time and time again here in Pasadena. It's my understanding that last year there was a tie. And so the
Yes.
vote was decided by a coin toss.
Yes.
So if one person would have voted, that would have
That's
took the edge. And so that's what I tell people. These local elections, they matter a lot more. And,
Right.
I think we've all said that this election is going to be very low turnout. And so every vote will matter. And you get to know us. You email anybody's campaign, they will most likely respond to you.
Right.
And
So that's what I tell people.
let me also say this: all the elections matter, because even in elections of Congress has been won across the country by 500 votes, 400 votes. I remember it was someplace in Indiana, a congressman won by literally 20 votes. He had 20 votes more than his opponent.
Yeah.
So that's, people don't understand it. It's like, that old saying, a journey is worth 1,000 miles, but you have to take that one step.
Mhm.
So with every single vote, you're putting somebody over the top.
Mhm.
Yes. And I always tell people is take one more person to the polls with you. Invite
Yes.
them to coffee and take one more person. You just
Yes.
doubled your vote.
Right.
And so that's what I tell people. Take one more person, take your mom, your sibling, your friend, and just tell them, hey, let's just go vote. Chances are you have a voting booth 5 minutes away from your house.
Absolutely. And tell me this, Alex. I want to make sure that I've got this right. You hear all the time in the news, especially here in Houston, about how backlogged our court systems are and how cases can sit for a year and not make it to trial. What does the district clerk's office have to do with preparing documents for the cases to get to trial, or are there steps?
Yeah, so there's multiple steps. What I do tell people is that regarding the case backlog, it's a systematic. I'm not elected, so I don't know how bad it is, but
Right.
everybody plays their part. The role of the district clerk is to make sure we accept the documentation, send them to the appropriate agency, and make sure that it's filed online. So that appropriate agency can be your judges, constable, sheriff, district attorney, wherever that record needs to be. And so my job, whenever I arrive there, is talking to our IT department and seeing, hey, every document has a timestamp. So
Right.
looking at that data and seeing, hey, well, where is backlog happening in the district clerk's office? Are citations taking too long to get processed? Are motions taking too long to get signed? But what is also just as equally as important is our judges. They set, how many times they're going to reset the docket. Your district attorney has to be able to gather all the evidence as well.
Okay.
That takes time. And so we all play a crucial role
Right.
in this aspect. And what I like to tell people is you could add more clerks, but if you don't have judges to sign motions,
Right.
nothing's happening.
Okay.
Even if you add more judges, if you don't have clerks to process the paperwork, they're just, and even bailiffs.
So they're working in tandem. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So it's our job to communicate with all agencies to make sure that we're all moving forward in Harris County, and so we all play our part.
Exactly. Now, as you were talking, I was just thinking about something because I'm sitting, you happen to sit with high schoolers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sitting with middle school students daily. All of them who would look like you and me, all of them, with the exception of maybe 1%.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that if you are victorious on the 26th, that you could possibly implement maybe some type of, maybe not weekly, but maybe a monthly podcast or Q&A where even students or the community could log on and ask questions?
Yeah, I think that's something that I'm more than open to doing. I mean, I think that's what I want to do. I actually want to be in our communities. I want to be in our schools. My dream would be that every 2 weeks I go visit a high school.
Yeah.
And educate our students, tell them, what questions do you have about not just my office, but any other office that I may be able to help you with. And so I think it would be a good idea to do something online,
Yes.
just because everybody can hop in, they
Yes.
can all listen. But I would also like to host some in-person events because I know some people are very much face-to-face. I'm one of those people. I prefer face-to-face over digital any day. And so I think it is all about community outreach. And then also just making sure, I think too often people do it, but the thing is that people don't know about it.
I'll be honest. I didn't know much about what the district clerk did. I didn't. Of course, we've all heard about it. We've all heard about it. But, Alex, you just expect things to flow like they need to. And you never think about the background stuff that has to happen in order for things to flow smoothly. Mm-hmm. But what I think is so important, what I think is so important is that our students who are sitting in our classrooms right now, that they actually are able to see you and talk to you simply more so than me or more so than Rebecca, because you're closer to their age. They can literally say, that could be me.
Crystal, I'm not old. Don't do that. I'm still young enough to relate.
But you're decidedly older than Alex. I'm decidedly older than you. So we've got different touch points here that it's going to be easier for you to connect to someone who's 15 years old than it would be for you, Rebecca, or me. Yes. Just because they love us, we're their teachers, but you know what?
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's a difference.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the parts where I like to bring in everybody's talents. I know that if I were to be elected, I can communicate with the younger people just because of my age. But that also is very important that I have people on my team who can communicate with, our people who have the experience, who've been around some time. Because a lot of times as a teacher, being a young teacher, a lot of times I'm saying, oh, well, let's do everything online. But I have teachers who struggle to use technology. And so it's good that I have people of all age groups. So therefore, if there are those struggles, then I'm aware of them and I can work with them and say, okay, well, we need to reach out all age groups, not just one specific group. And everybody has a different way of reaching out to them.
Absolutely. So I have something to kind of add, more like a question. You said earlier how math is a hated subject. Well, history has something in common because the kids don't like history either. I think they hate history worse than any other subject on planet. So, and I've been a history teacher for 14 years. So I know they hate
Yeah.
history. So it takes a lot. Like it takes a lot for you to get the kids engaged. It takes three dog and pony shows for me and Crystal to get them engaged. So, um, and that's what that's my point that I'm trying to make. Like one of the things that I had to take a lot of things and try to relate it as much as I could to
Yeah.
what the kids were doing.
Real
I
life connection.
right, i.e. living on TikTok because that was the only way I could get them to
Yeah.
even understand a portion of these things. So my question would be, how could you bring that experience to the kids where they understand it? Because the Constitution, law, political offices, that's over most adults' heads.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's so it's even more so for children. So
Mhm.
how can you get them engaged? Because they are going to be the next generation that's going to be participating in the political process.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And at the rate we're going, we're not doing the finest job in getting them engaged in the political process.
I
Um,
think you hit the nail on the head, and I'm sure Alex can speak to this. You said, with um, Alex's generation and yours, Rebecca, you guys have got such a touch point with Instagram and TikTok and Snapchat and all that. And heretofore, we haven't seen a lot of engagement from our uh, traditional entities and county and city with on those types of platforms.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. No, I do know that, whenever you're speaking to students, some things can go over their head.
Yeah.
Teaching AP statistics, there are some things that definitely do go over, everybody's head, sometimes even mine. Um, but what I think will captivate students, you know, I think it's the resources that we offer them that will captivate them. Almost every single student has a dream of traveling.
Right.
So connecting them,
they,
asking them with
they,
their first question is, well, hey, who wants to travel outside of the United States? I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure, and pivoting that question by saying, well, where do you want to go? Write it
Yeah.
down. And so I'm thinking right now, I'm kind of thinking on my feet because I
Yeah.
do this all the time in my classroom. When I taught geometry, one of the biggest things is getting area of multiple shapes. And so I would tell students, go on Zillow and look up your favorite house.
Yeah.
Getting that hook in, saying, what's your dream house? Okay, well, now let's find the area of that dream house. Let's find how many square feet it is,
Hmm.
by cutting it down into different shapes. And so I think it's the same way that if I were to go into our classrooms, I would start off with the first question, how many of y'all want to travel abroad? And if you do, where? Go on your laptops, give me your vacation destination, kind of, letting them work, they all have a
Right.
vacation place, and then letting them know, well, that my office can process passports. You
Yeah.
can let your mom know that we
Right.
can process passports on a Saturday. And so it's finding that engagement as well, hooking them up. And then the same thing with jury duty. I think one of my favorite history lessons was in government, where we acted as a model of Congress. We kind of were the Congress. So why don't we put our students to pretend to be a jury?
Mr.
You know,
Santos, Mr. Santos used to take his kids down. What was the name of that he used to do, Rebecca? Where the kids mock trial. Yeah, the mock trials. And we had a teacher over at who was also a social studies teacher at the school that we all worked at together for about 8 or 10 years, Navarro Middle School. And one of the teachers who'd been there at that time, he'd been there about 18 years, but he had litigators come in every year, and they had a project that was called mock trial. And the litigators came in and they worked with the students who would be defendants. They worked with the students who would be plaintiffs. And it culminated in them going down to the courthouse and actually going through a mock trial, which they loved. They absolutely loved
And
it.
if I'm not mistaken, from that mock trial, we have like 3 or 4 of those students who participated in mock trial are now on their way to law school.
Oh
That
yeah,
had they had a big that mock trial had a such a huge impression on them that they are on their way to law school now.
oh yeah, yeah.
And I
And
think you will also be connecting with our judges too. I mean, I feel like a lot of
exactly.
students they would love to see a judge in their robe. I feel like that would captivate their attention.
Yes,
You're kind of looking at what would captivate their attention. I don't think um, most people have maybe never been in a courtroom, their whole
yes,
life. And so, getting to go visit one for them on a field trip might be like a first, like, wow, like this is, um,
And
absolutely.
in Texas, we have open court systems, so you can go in and sit down and watch a case.
yes, you can. Yeah, you can do that. I actually did that a couple of weeks ago. I visited some criminal courtroom and a civil courtroom. And let me tell you, they're very different. They are the criminal courtroom. It's like fast, like every 2 minutes they got somebody new, while the civil courtroom it's a little bit, as
Wow.
somebody told me, the civil courts are nice because everybody is civil.
That
And I,
makes sense. Yeah.
I said in family court one time, I said these lawyers don't get paid enough.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
The drama is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, oh yeah. I said these they don't get paid enough to deal with what they do. They deal with dysfunction daily.
Wow.
You know, for
That's
the family to end up in family court, it's some serious stuff that done took place.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yes, and
And
and a lot of the times, people who go through family court, a lot of the times they're pro sayers. They don't have a lawyer most of the time because they're people
yeah,
getting divorces,
yeah.
trying to figure out who's going to have custody of their children, and so
Children
just
being
making
taken
sure that
away from parents.
yes, yes. So
Yeah.
there's a lot there, and so I think something also goes to making sure that our clerks are trained to deal with that social emotional aspect, because I
Yes.
think we as teachers were, especially for you guys, I can't say thank you enough as middle school teachers because you guys deal with them at their peak of their emotions. And I think
Yes.
every high school teacher always says thank you to our middle school teachers. We could never do your job. You can never do your job. Uh,
But you know what? The thing about it is, regardless of any powers that be that try to discount the job that we do as teachers, I think that when they see us come together in forums like this and see that teachers are much more than just people who will affect the students in the classroom. We run for office. We want to make sure that we are part of of the um, of the tool that is able to move our society down the road to be a better to be a better society. Let me ask you this, Alex, and then I'm gonna do a little. I've got to show this because this is just I was just so proud about this. But let me ask you this. Um, in the next, we touched on this a little bit a few minutes, just a little while ago. You said that when you were in high school, possibly over at East,
mhm.
that you're not sure how you were registered, but there used to be a time when your school counselors would they had voter registration applications in their offices, and any of the students that turned 18, they were asked, you can come down and register to vote. I don't even know if that's allowed anymore, but the school counselors were. I can tell you right now, probably in the largest school district in Texas, that's not probably not even encouraged anymore. But Rebecca could probably tell you more so than me, but because I've been away from there for a little.
We're not covering for them no more, Crystal. And HISD, no, it's not.
Okay. Okay. Well, that says a lot about what if it's really being encouraged for our students to take part in the political process,
Mhm.
you know, and hopefully within the next couple of years we can kind of turn that around, a lot. But for people to see a person like you, a young person like you, who has actually had, and tell me, reiterate this to me, the percentage of votes. You and the other runoff, the runoff candidate were basically neck and neck,
Yes,
right?
if I'm
Yes.
correct, if I remember correctly, it was I had 18.8 and my opponent had 18.9. We were
Oh,
separated by about I don't remember if it was 300 or 500. I've seen a
You're
couple of them, but
kidding.
it was a
Wow.
very small it's a very small number.
Gotta ask you this, with that in mind, Alex, what was your strategy being a newcomer out there? So were you just knocking on doors? Were you uh in every community meeting possible? How did you get your message out there to the community?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a mix of things. One of the ones was definitely my family was very involved. And so
Yes.
they were out there. One, they were working the polls. Two, they were out there block walking, knocking on doors,
Yes.
wherever we could, all of our spare time. And then for me, it was, also knocking on doors, but just being out there at almost every single Democratic club event I could find,
Right.
civic clubs that I could find as well.
Yes.
Um, and then just letting my community know. I think that was the biggest aspect of it. I've been in so many different positions, letting my friends that graduated from East Early, my friends from middle school,
Right.
all the jobs that I've held at different churches all around, and even calling up former colleagues of mine because I worked in
Right.
Spring Branch for some time. I think
Right.
all of that definitely helped in some form or fashion. But I think it was just a lot of hard work. And it's the same thing in this runoff election. We've been doing countless of hours of phone banking. I
Yeah.
don't know how many phone numbers we've called, but if I think I'm correctly, I think we've called over 10,000 numbers
Yeah.
between me and my volunteers.
Yes.
We've block walked, we've knocked on a couple of thousands of doors already, and so it's all part of the process. It takes a lot of
Yeah.
work,
Yeah.
especially being out there in the heat. It's pretty hot.
Yeah. Oh
Uh,
yeah.
but I
But it's
will say,
grassroots. It's
mhm,
grassroots.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And what I love, I told somebody recently, what I loved is, when you're knocking on the voters of people's doors, I feel so blessed because I was knocking, when was it? I think last Sunday. And almost every single door that I answered, they said, "Do you want a bottle of water? Do you want a snack? What
Wow.
what can I give you?" And
It's
I was like, that is
kindness.
such a
Yes.
blessing to see these people that they want to hear from their candidates. And most of the
Yes.
time they say, this is the first time I've had my door knocked,
Yes.
and so they're so happy to see a face actually trying to make contact with them.
Yes. If you could leave our viewers with one last message or point that you would like for them to know before they go to the polls, it's actually going to be next week. Next week.
Yes,
What would
yes.
you leave them with?
Yes. I feel like I have two messages. I have
Okay.
the pitch, and then I have, the sentimental message. I think the pitch is the district clerk's office needs somebody who's going to be innovative. We need to continue moving forward in the 21st century. We need to continue our technology using data-driven results. So therefore, we take good care of taxpayer money. We need to make sure we're allocating our resources effectively.
Mhm.
And Harris County is only getting bigger.
It
And
is.
so we need to be able to manage those digital files, making sure that we're keeping them in a safe place, making sure we're preventing them from cyber attacks,
Yes.
because that's a real issue. And
Yes.
so when people go out to the polls, just remember this office is administrative. It's all about technology. Every district clerk before Maryland, including Maryland and before Maryland, was known for innovation and for technology.
Right.
Now, my second more emotional message is it has been the biggest honor of my life. I'm so grateful to my family, to the voters, to God, that he gave me the opportunity to head into a runoff election. And I
Yes.
encourage anybody that if you have any interest in running for office, just do it. You don't know where you'll end up. You don't know where you'll end up, and you'll meet such amazing people, such as I have met you, Crystal and Rebecca. You'll meet people who share similar beliefs, people
Yeah.
who believe in you, and you build each other up. I mean, being part of the political process is just so beautiful, especially in the Democratic Party.
Yes.
So I encourage anybody to run. And if you have any thoughts about running and you want to ask me questions, or I'm pretty sure Crystal would also love to answer any questions, because I think the hardest thing for me was opening up that campaign finance report,
Oh God.
that campaign account on the banks. I think that took about 2 weeks.
Yes. Yes. Oh
So
my
I
goodness.
I ask
Yes.
everybody reach out, to me, to Crystal, to anybody who's ran for office, because we just want to be an inspiration for others.
Alex, if people would like to, I know you're in the final push, but if people would like to volunteer, if they'd like to be at the polls, if they would like to come in and do some of your phone calls, in this final push, how would they reach out to you? How would
Yes.
they contact you?
Yeah, I can actually give them my number. My phone number is 832-727-6709. That's my personal number. You call me, I will answer. And if I don't answer, just leave me a voicemail,
Mhm.
and I will get back to you. And that's you can also reach out to me through my website. My website is alexmaldonadoTX.com. You can reach out to me on Facebook or Instagram. It's the same thing, Alex Maldonado TX. And I will get back to you, or one of my volunteers will get back to you.
Well, Alex, we want to thank you so much for coming on. And I think that for me, it's so important when I'm making a decision that I feel as though I can connect with a candidate. I feel as though a candidate is genuine, and I feel as though that they really have my best interest at heart. And that's what we wanted to bring you on to do, so that people could meet Alex, the real Alex, not the
Yeah.
the candidate, but the person.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
No,
And I think
and
I
thank you
think
so
we've
much.
done it.
Yes, and thank you so much for hosting me. For allowing me to be here, and getting to bond with two great, warriors out in the middle school classrooms. I can never give you guys enough props for the good work that you guys do. So thank you for having this podcast, and thank you for inviting me.
Oh, you are welcome. And I found this picture, so I've got to pull this up, and I'm going to give him a shout out because I know he's still out there. But this is my student from Ortiz Middle School.
Oh,
That's Maurice. Yes, that's Mauricio. And we ended up being out that was at Hiram Clark, right, Rebecca?
Yes, it was. I think that picture actually.
That's teacher and student.
oh, that's so beautiful. I love
Yes,
that.
yes. I was so proud. Every time I think about it, I kind of tear up. Even to see your students become adults like that. Anyway,
Yes.
it's just like, oh, the last time
Yes.
I saw him, he was in middle school. But thank you so much for throwing your hat in the ring. Thank you for being an example and showing other young people that you're not too young. It doesn't matter if you don't have 20 years of experience of working in a certain office or in a certain capacity behind you. If you know you've got the qualifications, if you've got the heart, if you want to get the job done, then the sky's the limit.
Yes. No, I agree. Yeah, it's all about hard work. I think that's what my whole life has been. Hard work. Having a goal in mind, and at the end of the day, it's about public service. I mean, I
Yes.
didn't think everybody here, we didn't become teachers for the salary.
Yes.
Definitely not for the salary, but we became teachers because we wanted to serve our community in a beautiful capacity. And I just wanted to serve my community in a different capacity, and one that uses every single skill that I have, from being able
Yes.
to be a public speaker, to being able to educate people, and being able to use technology and software. And so I
Right.
just wanted to serve my community in a different perspective. And I hope people of Harris County give me that honor. And I will work day and night to make sure that we deliver them the best services I can give them.
Well, Alex, thank you so much. Rebecca, thank you so much. You got any? We're right here at 8:09, and we don't want to. I know Alex is still on the campaign trail. We don't want to keep him too much longer. But did you have a parting question for Alex, or anything that you want to thought you want to leave him with?
Oh no, just thank you for being here and thank you for allowing the public to get to know you and on our
Yes.
platform. So thank you for taking the time out. I know you're busy with the campaign. And I know the campaign is winding down as well. So I want to thank you for being here. I do.
Thank you. And thank you guys for having me here as well.
Thank you,
Okay.
Alex. And like we say every week, Rebecca, we can
We
do it. We'll see you later.